What's up? Hey, hello, everyone. Wow. So today we are back going to be talking about Survivor season 46. We are on episode 2 of this season. So my name is Rachel.
And I'm Alyssa, and this episode I feel like was kind of a wah 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 moment. We were all really hoping that the Purple Tribe would get its shit together now that Jelinski is gone. Boy, oh boy, that did not happen. So it's going to be interesting to talk about moving forward.
Purple Tribe is the hot mess tribe of the season. We'll see. Maybe they can win immunity next week, but that did not happen this week, and honestly, might not happen going forward.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if the Purple Tribe ends up being like basically decimated and then absorbed into the other tribes, which I have mixed opinions on, but I'm sure we'll talk more about that.
Yeah, so speaking of purple, we start the episode off with some of the aftermath from last tribal council. Banu, like we mentioned last week, having some problems. It seems like he had some trouble voting at this first tribal, is very emotional. Like crushing people's dreams is difficult. And honestly, like on a show like this, it is probably very hard to, once you get to know people, then vote them off in this kind of way.
Yeah, for sure. And I feel like it only gets harder the longer you know someone. Because, like, voting out someone after like 2 days, like, you know them, but do you really know them? And I feel like as it gets further in the game, it gets more and more difficult because you might have like a legitimate friendship built up.
Mhm. A friendship built up, but not an alliance built up. We see Kenzie comforting Banu, and then she also says that Banu's a bad liar. I think we see that this episode too. Banu, you can probably tell what he's thinking and what he's going to do, although, like we're going to see later at Tribal Council, I don't really know if I would want him in my alliance because even though he seems to be more follower ish at the current moment, he definitely could go like off and pick whatever plan he wants if he's feeling threatened.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting. A lot of people were like, oh, I'm surprised that Banu didn't get voted out this episode, being that like he does seem like he's a little bit of a loose cannon. But given he asked Kenzie, like, Kenzie, who am I voting for? I was kind of like, I mean, in some ways, you probably want an alliance member who will be like, hey, who are we voting for? But also,
Not a sort of loose cannon one, which if Purple loses again, definitely could see Banu going unless he's able to figure it out, get his act together, and act more calm and not spill beans at tribal council basically. Or maybe Kenzie could go because we also see this episode Q and Tiffany, they are seeing that Kenzie is very, very likable. We talked about this too preseason. Like, Kenzie seems very cool, want to be friends with her in real life. She's very popular on the island. So I could also low key see Q and Tiffany flip on Kenzie before merge. Since Banu is more weak socially, maybe you keep Banu around if he's able to calm down and you vote out Kenzie because Kenzie could definitely find new friends come a tribe swap or merge.
yeah, I feel like Kenzie is one of those people who's dangerous because she's so likable, and Banu is someone who you can basically cut anytime because it's really easy to sell the like Banu's a loose cannon, we need to let him go, whereas it might be harder to like sell like oh Kenzie's too social, we should get rid of her just because I feel like a lot of times when people are too social, people will be like yeah they are a social threat, but also I don't want to get rid of them because of X, Y, or Z. So
Exactly. And speaking of Kenzie, she gets this scene where she's crying, talking about being human. And in this scene, I was sort of like, oh, interesting. Are we supposed to root for her as like a potential winner or someone that goes far? Or is she getting this segment because maybe she gets voted out soon? It sort of reminded me of Mariah's segment last week that she got that was like, oh, I'm so awkward. Like, this is definitely out of my comfort zone. And then we get two more segments of people being insecure.
Yeah, I feel like it's one of those things that they're doing where they're trying to like humanize people and be like, the survivors are just like you. But I feel like it does become really one note when everyone like has a tragic backstory, when everyone's like, I'm really insecure about myself because like yeah, I feel like that's kind of the human condition to be insecure about yourself, but hearing it repeated over and over is kind of like come on, show me someone who's kind of an asshole because they're so like full of themselves. Like I feel like Liz this season, I love her because she's just like totally ignoring social cues, being like, I'm so rich, I have so much money. And it's like that's fun because she's different. Like I don't feel like a lot of people go on Survivor to then brag about how much money they have. But it was different. It was interesting.
Yeah, low key, I thought all of these segments, I'm like, oh, all these people are crying on day 4, which is like, yes, yes, we don't know what the experience is. But then I was also thought it was funny because this week it was like day 37 in Australian Survivor. And in Australian Survivor, day 26 is like not even merge yet or just merge. So it's really weird to juxtapose how long Australian Survivor is that the whole game of US Survivor in 26 days is just so quick compared to 39 days or Australian Survivor being 50 some days. It's like really weird to see people like breaking down on day 4 when these other ones are so much longer.
I also feel like one of the things that's difficult about this shorter timeline is it does make it more difficult for people who are more socially awkward to like have time to open up and build connections. Like I feel like Jess might have still been the vote out this episode if like it were the longer form of Survivor and
Mhm.
it was 39 days, but also she might have like found her footing socially and like gotten more rest and been able to kind of, thrive on the tribe. And I feel like that's another thing where I feel like beyond just the length of the game, it also really affects who is able to be successful at the game.
Yeah, it's like you either have to be more extroverted, talkative, or you have to force yourself to go out of that comfort zone in order to create those bonds and alliances very, very quick. I sort of agree. I feel like the tides could have turned for Jess if it were the longer form game. Like Tiffany, she just says, "Yeah, Jess, I think she's just socially awkward." So it's not like a necessarily diss against a person, like this person just sucks, but oh, they're seeing, okay, her not talking to me, her doing these things, it's not her being sketchy on the show, maybe she just is awkward kind of thing. And maybe I don't know, I feel like from exit stuff just sort of was like, yeah, I'm ready to be voted out. I'm ready to go home. But like, if she genuinely did want to stay, and maybe if it were longer and she had more time to build bonds and connections, maybe she could have. Because we saw at the start of this episode, she's making more effort to share about herself, to connect. Maybe her, Kenzie, and Banu could have created something because they went in the cave together and they were talking about maybe flipping on Q and Tiff. So if she wanted to be there, I feel like Jess could have maybe been able to not get voted out if she genuinely wanted to stay in the game.
Yeah, but I feel like that also goes back to having more time to adjust, being able to like get back on a regular sleep schedule, et cetera, et cetera. I think it sounds like no one really had a personal vendetta against Jess, kind of like you said. But I feel like what Kenzie said about like, she's just not that good at the game of Survivor. I feel like that was a little unfair given how little of Jess's Survivor game anyone saw. So
Yeah, it's also sort of funny with the exit press. Jess really, really likes Banu and like loves him basically. And then she's ragging on the other 3 of the tribe, and she does not have seemingly good relationships with the others.
yeah, I feel like it's difficult because I don't know. Banu yelled at her, but it also seems like he kind of gets a pass for being so emotional, which I think is really interesting. But I feel like it would be harder to hear someone say, like, she's just not that good at Survivor or other things that were said about Jess. So I don't know.
So we go to Orange Team, Tevin doing a lot of narrating. He definitely seems to get a lot of confessionals. I feel like Tevin is the Kenzie of this tribe, where Kenzie on Purple, very popular. Tevin here, also very popular. Tevin, we see is says that he doesn't trust Venus. Last week we hear Randon talk about how Venus gives off Parvati vibes. Here now we're learning Tevin doesn't like her, which isn't good for Venus because Tevin is very popular on this tribe. And Tevin then tells Soda that she needs to distance herself from Venus because people are getting bad vibes from her.
Yeah, it's interesting because I feel like people have been going back and forth on Venus, where it like seems like people like her, but then it seems like people don't like her. This week, she and Randon like have a talk, even though last week Randon was like, "I don't like Venus," so it's kind of like, what what is going on here? You know, I I think it's interesting to see how people have been flip flopping.
I thought it was a good read from Venus. We hear that she sees Tevin as the top of the tribe, and it's not good that they're not connecting. So she's maybe trying to make an effort, but also realizes that Tevin is not having any of it from her, and they're maybe not going to create a bond. I do want to know, though, maybe an exit press, maybe someone will say something, but like, why isn't Venus able to connect with other people? Why do people think that she's giving bad vibes? Is it solely based on her looks and people are judging her based on that? Is it because of her age and she's like a little younger than everyone else? Sort of want to know why people don't like her because we haven't really seen her do anything. Maybe she's quieter and doesn't talk as much, but she hasn't like hurt someone.
I wonder if part of it is just like an attitude thing, also, because I feel like one
Mm.
of the things that people sometimes run into is they feel like other people dislike them, so they start acting in a defensive way. And then it kind of becomes a self fulfilling prophecy where people are like, oh, nobody's going to like me because I'm like this young, pretty girl and I give off bitchy vibes. And then in kind of their perceptions of how other people are going to react to them, they end up creating the situation that other people are reacting to, if that makes any sense.
It does. I wonder then, where is this dislike for her coming from?
Yeah, I mean, I would like to believe that there's like a legitimate reason and people aren't just being jerks to her for no reason, but I guess we won't ever know.
And it is the thing, oh, six people tribes, they're so small, someone has to be on the outs. Just based off of initial first impressions, you might be like, oh, sketchy, we don't like them. You have to have four people in your team for this so you can vote out and have the majority. And so maybe you're just like, yeah, we can't all six like each other a ton, so just pick someone and we want to get rid of them. Maybe it's because people found her looking for idols. This episode, we see Venus, Randon, and Hunter look for idols, where Randon is the one who finds the Beware advantage. He takes it. It seems to be the same mission that Tiffany got. Last week, I remember we were talking about, okay, for the other tribes, if it's different, like harder or easier, that would be problematic. But as of right now, it seems like it's the same as Tiffany's.
Yeah, and I don't know. I said last time that I didn't particularly enjoy this mission, and I feel like this kind of shows why. It's just kind
Hmm.
of like meh. Like they don't actually have to do anything dangerous. So, and then also obviously they didn't lose, so they don't even like get to know what mission they're going to be on until they lose. So,
Like we said last week, it's not necessarily a Beware advantage because your team loses immunity. You have a couple hours before tribal in order to find the idol, unlock the like little puzzle code thing, all of that. But like if you don't get it and you don't solve the puzzle and find all of the clues, then yeah, problematic. You don't have a vote at the next tribal. And maybe we'll see that. Maybe someone will fail to complete it in that day and then they don't have an idol and then they lose their vote. I think that would be interesting. I think it'd be more boring to see like the same steps of people going through the same digging, the same puzzle hunt, all of that 3 times in a row. So hopefully it's a little different. Maybe the word puzzle is different, but also with like puzzle unscrambles, you really can't play along at home, so you're just watching someone else do a puzzle.
yeah, I think also, I don't know. I really hated the original Beware advantage where they had to wait for other people because then it was kind of like it's not entirely dependent on you whether or not you get the idol. But I do feel like this really can't even be called a beware advantage because there's nothing to beware of.
Unless you just suck and you can't figure it out after you lose immunity.
Yeah, but again, that feels more personal, and it's just like I don't know. I liked it better when it felt like there were more stakes to the beware advantage. I did not personally feel many stakes when they found it, especially knowing like what the eventual like puzzle is going to be.
Or yeah, bring back regular idols. At least it's not a birdcage fake idol. So we're
Honestly, the
moving
birdcage was
forward.
better than this.
Yeah, I'd say birdcage, but not the fake. The not the fake idols that people think are real. I'm like that sucks.
Hmm.
But Randon, he tells Venus about this, and I'm like, okay, unlikely duo given what happened last week, but that's interesting. Low key, I'm here for it. Randon realizes that maybe he's on the bottom too, so maybe him and Venus can do something. Although, I don't know, in a six-person tribe, if you lose, maybe you should just let Venus get voted out and then you save yourself with the idol. Like to go to the other person that has no friends on the team might not work because you'll still be 4-2 and then 3-2 if you idle someone out.
Yeah, you might want to like pick someone who has at least an other ally so that when you do like have something happen, you can like move up from there. Like you said, it feels like there's no real way for them forward. So,
Exactly, because if Brandon and Venus don't actually have trust within one another, like their two names come up on the chopping block if they go to tribal, Venus now can easily use this against you, throw you under the bus, saying Brandon has an idol, we need to blindside him, vote him out with an idol in his pocket, and then
mhm.
maybe now Randon is getting voted out when he wasn't going to be the first boot of this tribe. So they either do need to truly trust each other and vote in the same way and try to get a plan together to vote in the same way, or one can just easily screw the other over to not be the first out on this tribe.
Yeah, I feel like this probably was just like a one episode plot line, side quest, whatever, to like kind of pad out the 90 minutes and make us think that there's, an alliance between Venus and Randon. I don't see it lasting long term just because, like you said, there's not really any trust between them.
Yeah, like Tevin, Soda, Hunter, we see that as a strong threesome. Maybe Brandon should have went to like Hunter or someone. Tevin might be dangerous to go to since he does have so many friends. He could just use this against you because like why would you want someone else having an advantage when you could have one? I wouldn't really go to Liz either. She's probably on the chopping block too. Like you said, given how much she talks about money, I would be like, yo, I'm going to vote you out. You don't need the money. And you keep talking about it. So you can go home.
I feel like the problem with Liz is that if she were to be more likable, I feel like maybe she would be taken along as a goat because like, oh, you
Mhm.
don't need the money. That's an easy argument to make at Final Tribal. But I think because people like don't enjoy spending time with her, it's kind of like, okay, maybe I'll pick a goat who like I at least enjoy spending time around. And that makes a difference whether or not you're lucky or whether or not you're like get to the end. So
I agree. You want like a goat himbo, someone that doesn't really talk too much strategy and someone that like isn't annoying to you. Someone that's smart like Liz and maybe would try to make her own plans, even if people don't necessarily want to give her $1 million at the end because she has a ton of money, like, don't give her it kind of thing. I think, like, it would be harder because Liz definitely would want to make plans on her own, try to flip a vote. It's harder to bring her as a goat, like, you want someone that's not really doing much as your goat, but I do agree. Maybe it's a future strategy. You act himbo and act rich, and then you say, "I'm not actually dumb and I'm not actually rich. Give me the money."
yeah, it's just you have to know when to make that flip of, I'm not actually dumb because, you know, people might not believe you if you like come out at the final tribal and are like, actually, I was the secret mastermind the whole time. So
So we go to the green tribe. Ben is making fire, but he's also making more music analogies.
Yeah, I the music on this tribe I thought was so funny when Ben and Charlie like had their whole thing of like Metallica versus Taylor Swift. I was like, is this really what we're spending all of our time on? I mean, like more power to them, but also I was like, yeah.
The little counter at the bottom of the screen was funny, but after a little bit, I was like, "Okay, are we done yet? Like, okay, this is great." But
Let's
low
fast forward to
key,
the end.
yeah. Me listening to this, if I were out there, I would be like, yo, WTF? These two can name over 100 plus songs from each of these artists. I'm going to vote you out. Like, you all are listing so many facts, means you have a good memory. I would be threatened that you two are very, very smart. I'd be like, yo, did you see how many songs they named? We need to vote both of them out.
I thought it was so interesting that everyone was like, normally this would annoy me, but since I'm so bored because there's nothing to do on the island, this was like riveting to me. I was like, I wonder like how much these people would actually get along if they met each other in real life, just because it's so different when you're on the island. Like, would any of them actually be friends? Or are they just all friendly because there's no one else to talk to, and you would go a little bit cuckoo bananas if you didn't talk to anyone for 29 days?
I think it would be funny, like, what if you just started making up song names? Because it's like, okay, Taylor Swift popular, Metallica popular. What if you say a less popular band, you name like 10 songs that are real, and then you just start making up names? Because there's no way for both of these that everyone knew every single song from this and you could fact check it. I'm just like, I would be making it up for funsies.
Well, I also want to know how they were keeping track of what songs they had already said. Because I feel like if you're naming like 107 songs, you're probably going to end up repeating things even accidentally. So
Mhm.
I'm kind of like, what was going on there? Like, who was their judge? Because like someone when Charlie was like all too well and all too well 10-minute version is different songs. Someone was like, yeah, I'll allow it. Like, was Mo their judge? I need to know, actually. I need to know.
Yeah, or it's like, okay, jumping around albums, songs, yeah, you're going to lose count. It does seem like maybe Ben just went in album order and was just has the whole discography memorized, which that's even more threatening. You know each album in order, and then you know the 10, 15 songs on the album in order that you can just list them down like that. That is I would think threatening. And then for Charlie, for all of the new Taylor's version songs, does he get to name it twice? So like the regular one and then now the
Taylor's
remastered
version?
version of it? Yeah.
We need to know the answers to these very important questions. I feel like the thing is though, I feel like Ben could maybe get away with this more because he could be like, yeah, I'm a musician, like it's my
Mhm.
job to know this. Whereas Charlie, he's just a fan. And I'd be like, if you're this passionate about like Taylor Swift, how passionate are you about Survivor? Where like, you probably know everything there is to know about Survivor. So
Exactly. Like, to me, it comes off as threatening because with a good memory, you don't know. Maybe he studied puzzles and memorized puzzles, vote him off. Maybe he's memorized different voting strategies or like four different advantages or like splits of votes, how you should vote in a way that makes it so you can't lose kind of thing. And it's like we've seen people in preseasons talk about, yeah, I've watched every episode twice, three times. I've got Google documents analyzing every single episode. Similar thing here, I would extrapolate out, oh, you've got a really good memory, so you're smart. What else could you be good at? Did you study Survivor in this way? But I agree, Ben probably has a little bit more of an out. He would just memorize them in order for work.
yeah. But I feel like that definitely was a 90-minute episode thing where it was like, okay, you're trying to pad out a little bit of time there.
So on the Green Tribe, we see that it is split a little bit with the men versus the women, and Maria and Charlie are in the middle of this tribe. Charlie does say he feels like he's on the bottom of the women's alliance, and we see Maria and Charlie come together as partners. They're now the swing votes. They compare themselves to Malcolm and Denise. Because Charlie feels at the bottom of the women's alliance, I do wonder if this duo just ping pongs back and forth. So maybe you vote out one of the men first, and then you flip, and then you vote out one of the women second, in order to make sure no one feels uncomfortable with like the gender ratio of this tribe. But I'd be interested to see this tribe go to tribal to see how they work as a swing.
I'm not sure they're going to go to tribal though, because they seem like the most like functional of all of the tribes, in the sense that they all actually seem to like each other. Like I think the problem with the purple tribe is they're not very like physically strong, and the problem with the orange tribe is like half of them don't even really like each other. So I feel like anything that requires like cooperation, teamwork, like we saw Venus get really upset this time because she was like, "You guys didn't listen to me, and that caused my like toe to get hurt." And I feel like that kind of shows that like they're not communicating as well as maybe they could. And so I feel like the green tribe is the one that's doing the best overall, because even if they're not like perfect, it seems like they all relatively like each other and they all like are decently strong. So
Speaking of getting her foot ran over in the immunity challenge, we go to this challenge and everyone is shocked that Jelinski was voted out first. People start making fun of Jelinski on the mats, and then we see some fighting on the mats. I was like, okay, this is very interesting.
first name, last out. That was my favorite line from this episode.
Yeah, last name first
Last
out.
name, first out. I got it in the wrong order.
Yeah, or like, oh, it took did you have several reasons to vote him out?
Yeah, I do like kind of the cross tribe interaction where it seems like they're actually like talking to each other, because I think that makes the merge more interesting because they kind of have an idea of each other's like personalities and stuff before they actually merge and come together.
I agree. I think the several stuff is still funny now a week later. People are calling season 47 season 40 several.
I love that.
So for this challenge, you get the machete, you have to get your cartwheels, then you get a chest, and then you have to push this cart through a course. Then at the end, it is this big puzzle arch. We see Mariah and Liz sitting out of this challenge. Low key in like the pre Ponderosa stuff, Mariah and Kenzie were said to be getting confused with one another, like staff was confusing them because of their hair. When we see Mariah and Liz both sitting out, I'm like, yo, these two sort of look the same. Maybe it's the glasses.
I did not think they looked the same at all, but that's okay. I just I liked how during the challenge it kept cutting back to Mariah and Liz like awkwardly making small talk, where they were like, "I'm Mariah" or "Mo," and I'm like, I just thought that was so funny. Like their tribe mates are like trying to like wheel that huge ass cart around, and they're both like, "Hey, nice to meet you."
Maybe it's the awkward energy and the glasses, because to me, I don't really see how the staff is getting Mariah and Kenzie confused. Because they definitely, I just maybe it's the energies like between those two. Compared to Mariah and Liz, I feel give off more similar energy.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like none of them are really that similar, but if other people are confused, other people are confused.
Yeah, so we get to the big blocks part. I was like, yo, these heavy blocks, they're gonna fall on your toe, break your toe, they're gonna scrape your face. People are misspelling the word, getting the blocks messed up. I was stressed watching this. I'm like, why is everyone screaming? Literally. It was very in your face challenge.
Yeah, I feel like it was really difficult because like those kinds of arches are difficult to make in the best of circumstances. Like we had to do something similar in a class that I took. Like we made an arch out of foam blocks, and let me tell you, it was hard enough with foam blocks. I can't imagine with those heavy ass wooden blocks. Like, whew. And I feel like it's one of those things where you kind of see people's true colors the more and more stress that they got,
hmm
where like some people were like raising their voices but not being mean, but then the way that Banu yelled at Jess, like I was uncomfortable on this side of the screen. I was like, dude, it's just a challenge, take a chill pill.
And also, it's like some of these people had bad strategies for the blocks. Like, why are you having the short people in the center? You should have like the women probably on the edges because they're smaller and then they carry less blocks. And then you have the taller guys do the center of the puzzle because they're taller and they can maybe hold like 3 or 4 blocks compared to like the women on the edges holding like 2 or 3. Like, you got a longer wingspan. You got to send the guys to the middle.
Yeah, it felt like some tribes were just not understanding the strategy. Like people trying to make Jess put in the last block. I'm like, she's small. She can't reach. Just I
Yeah.
also there were times when people were like, okay, we need to switch. And I was like, you should have thought about who was where so that you never had to switch. Because I feel like switching positions with those blocks would be even more difficult because like you need to maintain tension. Like,
Mm.
ooh,
It was a stressful challenge to watch. Like you mentioned, I feel like this kind of puzzle would be good on like job interviews. Like, how do you work under pressure? How do you work on a team? Send 6 people into here and make them do this puzzle together. And then that's how you pick who you're hiring.
that would be no.
So we see orange wins first place, green second. Orange hasn't lost anything yet. Purple is last place again. I feel like Jelinski would have been good at this challenge because he's tall, so he could have held up the center more.
I think part of it though is a lot of it seemed to be like mentally. Like there were people who were like, yeah, it's really hard to keep holding this up. And I wonder if Jelinski would have just been like, my arms are getting tired and then given up. So
Maybe Banu could have screamed at him, but that's like 10 million more syllables to scream.
Jelinski.
So, after the challenge, we did get a short segment from Venus, which I thought was interesting because usually after the challenge, in like the shorter episodes and even in the 90-minute episodes, you never really see anything from the winners of the challenges. You mostly just go back to the losing team and go to tribal council. So, with the longer form episode, we got some from Venus. She said she had her foot ran over and she doesn't feel like she was heard at the challenge. And now she's really mad at Soda, which I thought was interesting because episode 1, we saw Venus and Soda bonding, and now it seems like they don't.
Yeah, I don't know. It's one of those things where I feel bad for Venus for getting her foot run over, but also I feel like she took it like to a very like extreme where it wasn't just like, oh, they accidentally ran over my foot because they didn't hear me. She took it to like, you guys just don't ever listen to me. And I'm like, maybe take a step back. Like, I feel like it was kind of overgeneralized from what we as the audience saw. So
Yeah, I do wonder, like, are these little I guess I did like the idol scenes that they replayed back. So when Venus is talking how she doesn't really like Soda anymore and talks about Soda grabbing the idol from her each time, I liked how they showed us the replays of this because it just reminded me so much of like something irks you and then you don't have any receipts. So then you just look like a wacky person. Like, yeah, this person irks me because of XYZ. And you're like, oh, grabbing the idol, that doesn't really mean anything. But seeing it back, I'm like, oh, dang, okay.
yeah, I did think it was funny because Venus full named Soda. Like she called Soda by her full name and not Soda. And I was like, oh, that's how you know she's really serious.
So I guess we'll see. We got a lot of beef on this team, so we'll see next week. Maybe they won't win a challenge and then they'll go to tribal.
Yes, I'm really looking forward to that just because they're the messiest team, I feel like.
So after the challenge for purple, we see Tiffany crying. She says that she doesn't want the perception of being an angry black woman on TV and in these challenges. And so I think that's something that's really fascinating. And we've seen a lot of like with people of color on TV shows, like, oh, I don't want to be seen a certain way or perceived a certain way. That is just perpetuating a stereotype.
Yeah, and I think it's also really difficult because in this case, I feel like Tiffany did have a reason to like be upset. Like, yeah, the challenge was really difficult and everyone was yelling. So it would be really
Mhm.
unfair, I feel like, if someone singled out Tiffany. It was like, Tiffany, you shouldn't have been yelling. But I feel like it's one of those things where our implicit biases, we don't necessarily notice that, like, oh, I'm being harder on Tiffany for yelling at people than I have been on, like, I don't know, Ben, who's a white man, for yelling at people. So,
Yeah, and then with Tiffany too, we see Tiffany and Kenzie make a fake idol, and then they bring her over, like Jess over to try to find the idol. Jess doesn't find it, and they're sort of like, "Yo, how could you not find the idol?" Making fun of Jess a little bit. I was like, "Huh, maybe you keep Jess around because she isn't really trying. She sort of sucks kind of thing at like playing the game a lot." But also, I don't know, then Q giving Jess the fake idol, "Vote for who I tell you to." I was like, the whole fake idol thing seemed like too much. I get it, you don't want her to play the shot in the dark, but it just seems unnecessary, like tricking her. The shot in the dark is a 1 in 6 chance. You don't need to like bamboozle people to make them a fool.
yeah, I feel like it's one of those things where I'm not even sure Jess had enough brain power to remember that her shot in the dark existed, let alone be like, I should play it tonight. So, yeah, it felt like I get why they did it, but I also feel like it didn't really need to be done.
Yeah, like I don't know, it's like Jess took it fine and she's like, "Haha, like, I knew it was probably fake, so I'm not, like, butthurt about it."
Mhm.
But I don't know, I feel like I'd be low key getting ganged up on and sort of being made fun of if people were making a fake idol, so you don't play the shot in the dark, but the shot in the dark is such a slim chance that it just feels like you're intentionally being tricked in a mean way.
Yeah, I feel like the thing that made it like kind of uncomfortable for me was the fact that they like went out of their way to like hide a fake idol and then were like, she's just too stupid to find it. Like, come on. It's obvious to you because you know that you put it there. Like, we see people walking past idols in Survivor like all the time.
Mhm.
Literally all the time. Like, so yeah, it felt a little bit mean spirited.
Yeah, and it's like, it is a game, everyone can do what they want. It just like, Jess is so on the outs already, and then you're going to trick her with this fake idol. At least Jess thought it was weird that Q just literally gave her the idol. I was like, if she or no one else realized that this was sus, that would be a problem. Because like, who's giving each other an idol on day 4, 5, 6? It's just whack.
Especially when they're not even like super close allies. Like if
Mhm.
like one of my closest allies came up to me on like day 4, 5, 6 and was like, "Hey, I have this idol for you." I'd think it was like a little weird, but I probably would be like, "Okay, this is just to solidify our alliance." But if like someone who I have never spoken to in the game tries to give me an idol, I'd be like, "This is a trap."
100%. It's sus as heck. We also see Q and Tiff talking. They see Kenzie as jealous of Q and Tiff's alliance and relationship. Q sort of maybe wants to vote Kenzie out this episode. I was interested to see, okay, would Q get his way again and get Tiffany to vote Kenzie out? Q got his way last week when it seemed like the women didn't necessarily want to vote Chelinsky out. Here, Tiffany doesn't really want to vote Kenzie out at this moment, but I don't know. I do agree with the assessment that like you would have to babysit Jess and Banu if you kept them around. They're probably less strong survivor players and more followers versus Kenzie's more dangerous, but you do have to weigh the pros and the cons of like danger versus babysit. I feel like for me, this episode it would be too early to vote Kenzie out because then next week it's sort of a 2-2 like Jess and Banu versus Q and Tiffany, although it probably still swings in Q and Tiffany's favor where they get Jess or Banu to flip on the other one. But I don't know. Too much babysitting. Like I'd vote Banu out next just because like it's sort of hard to deal with.
Yeah, and I think also if you're Q, you need to think about, last time I got my way, maybe this time I let someone else get their way, kind of for the good of the alliance, like making sure that your alliance members don't just see you as like a bully.
Exactly. So I guess it worked out. They do get rid of someone they're not really working with, someone that is, I would say I would maybe want to vote Banu too because he's a wild card compared to Jess. At least she can keep her mouth shut because Banu, passionate at tribal council, he was definitely talking too much, sharing the plans, like being too anxious, nervous, you're going to sketch people out. And then he's saying, yeah, we're a tribe, but come merge, I won't be spilling the beans like this. I would be scared of bringing someone like that to a tribe swap or merge because they could easily spill the beans if they catch wind of their name or they get a little bit sus at tribal and then they're just like say, yeah, Q's got an idol, vote him out just because they're nervous.
Yeah, and I feel like it's one of those things where you can say like, "Oh, I won't do this after the merge," but like people don't know what's going on inside your head, where it could be that yeah, you're not going to do this come the merge, but they don't know that because they only have to go off what you've already done. So if you've already kind of shown that you can't, keep a secret, people aren't going to believe that even if you're like, "No, no, no, that's not how it really is." So,
Yeah, this tribal was a little bit whack. I was like, what is happening? It's so heated. People are bickering a little bit. People are fighting. Banu is walking around and not getting any answers because he's nervous about the vote. Jess gets up and plays the fake idol. So at least she sort of good sport. She laughed about it and not like angry too much, seemingly, hopefully, not too hurt by it. I would want to vote Banu out now because after this tribal, after him getting up and walking around and not getting a good answer, even though they all voted the same way, I would be nervous that Banu doesn't trust you anymore. Because, like, getting up at tribal council, trying to figure out what the plan is, obviously you don't trust me.
yeah, I think also with everything we've talked about with Banu, like being kind of emotional and also being someone who you can't necessarily trust to keep his mouth shut, like it's kind of all of these are reasons to kind of cut him loose if you do lose again.
I agree. Similar to like the goat talk that we had, a goat is only good if you can actually control them. You don't really want someone that is going to be too vocal about something if they're nervous about it. You want someone that's an easy follower that won't really ask too many questions, that'll just go with your plan, not someone that has their own ideas and might spill the beans if they think they're getting voted out.
Yeah, the only thing about voting out Banu is I feel like he could be someone who would react really poorly to being voted out. So if you vote him out, you might want to do it before the jury because if he like gets upset and starts yelling like he was yelling at Jess, maybe he's not going to vote for you if you're the one who voted him out.
That's true. That's something to think about. Do you want someone on the jury versus not on the jury if he's butthurt and seemingly would be maybe the kind of player that if he were hurt and voted onto the jury, no matter how good of a game you played, maybe he won't vote for you at the end kind of thing. So that would be something to think about.
Yep, for sure.
Yeah, so I thought this episode was very exciting. I am excited for next week's episode of Survivor. It is a 90-minute episode next week. So we had 2 weeks of 2 hours. Then we go into 90 for the rest of the season. Next week, I believe, is also the Amazing Race premiere. So that is very exciting. I'm excited for the future of this season.
Yeah, I'm also excited for the future of this season. I feel like we have some good characters emerging already. We have some good conflict emerging already.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm really excited to see who ends up winning in all of these interpersonal conflicts and also just like what happens next.
Yeah, so let us know in the comments down below. What did you think of this episode? Do you think that Jess could have made it further if she wanted to be there and the game was longer? Do you think Banu is the next person voted out of this tribe? Why do you think nobody likes Venus on the orange team? Let us know in the comments below, and we will see you all next week talking about episode 3.